Movies. Everything you see and hear was done on purpose. Everything has meaning. Join Corey Heitschmidt, Justin Eldon, and me, Craig Dickinson, for Reading Between the Reels. Each episode will break down the movies you love and analyze cinematography, sound, performance, and set design to uncover the significance of the filmmaker's choices. Reading Between the Reels, available wherever you listen to podcasts.
I'm Ashley Chancellor.
And I'm Bo Maddox.
And this is Collateral Cinema. Welcome to Collateral Cinema, the only movie podcast that matters, where we focus on good movies, bad movies, and everything else in between in the world of cinema. We are podcasting straight from somewhere in Texas, and yes, my friends, we are a 420-friendly podcast, so whatever you have, smoke it if you've got it. If you've got that old Toby or, that long bottom leaf, you gotta smoke that shit, right, Bo?
Exactly. Some of the Shire's finest buds, man. I mean, you got to put them all in your pipe and you just got to smoke that shit.
You got to smoke it.
And man, I just want to say, I really, really love that this movie has, at least the first one has a little bit of a reference to smoking some herbs. So it's like, yeah, it's very fitting for these particular movies.
Your love of the halfling's leaf, yes. I think Tolkien actually envisioned that as tobacco, but I don't know. I just headcanon that it's weed.
Man, back in his time, it wasn't out of place for people to like straight up smoke hashish and stuff like that, or opiates. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, yeah, your mileage may vary on what that might be here. So, yeah.
But anyway, welcome to part one of our two-part episode on another film trilogy. In fact, I would go so far as to say the greatest film trilogy of all time, and that is The Lord of the Rings. Now, listen up, all right? We've talked about some film trilogies before. We've done the Star Wars prequel trilogy. We'll be doing the original trilogy next year for the 50th anniversary. We've done the Indiana Jones trilogy, and there's other great film trilogies. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy, or hell, even his Evil Dead trilogy. Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins, Dark Knight trilogy. But they were all of them deceived, for another film trilogy was made. In the early 2000s, Peter Jackson and New Line Cinema forged the Lord of the Rings film trilogy, the adaptation of the beloved J.R.R. Tolkien novels.
Amazing. Hell yeah. Man, I remember when we first heard of the first rumblings of these movies. I mean, it just caused a little bit of a geekgasm just all throughout, especially in the early internet and everything. I mean, we're talking like late 90s, early 2000s here.
Yeah.
This is the first movie of Fellowship of the Ring. It came out in 2001.
Mm-hmm. In fact, it just celebrated its 25th anniversary this year, just last month. And they screened all the movies, the extended editions in theaters. I went to go see them in the movies, and that was awesome seeing those on the big screen. But yeah, 25 years since Fellowship of the Ring. That's insane.
I know, man. It makes you feel kind of old now, right?
Yeah. But for a 25-year-old film, dear God, does it hold up? I mean, the visual effects, the screenplay, everything. Wow, it stands the test of time.
I'm so blown away by how awesome these movies just looked. Even like we're talking about special effects, both practical and CGI, that, like you said, it's going on 25 to 30 years now. And man, it looks as crisp as something that just came out this year.
Yeah.
I mean, But at the same time, it's just so incredibly timeless, And a lot of that has to do with Peter Jackson and how he utilized all of the tricks of the trade that he picked up, making all of those crazy splatter movies and crazy evil Muppet movies and everything, and Heavenly Creatures and whatnot, and it all culminated into how he filmed this movie. I mean, this is what really established Peter Jackson as one of the premier filmmakers of our time. And he became one of the more important filmmakers of the 2000s as a result.
Yeah, I don't want to necessarily call Peter Jackson an auteur, but he has a seat at that table for these films alone. I would say he's an even better filmmaker than James Cameron, honestly. And I think that's a good comparison because he's another big spectacle director. But I feel like these films actually take themselves quite a bit more seriously and more mature than some of Cameron's.
I am going to push back on him not being an auteur. He is 100% an auteur. I mean, you really need to go back and just watch those first 4 or 5 movies that he did back in the day. Like starting with Bad Taste, which he pretty much said that was his film school right there, was learning how to make a Bad Taste. And if you've ever seen that movie, that's a very impressive movie that he financed on his own. He filmed it in New Zealand, much like he did with these movies. Mm-hmm. And he pretty much learned the tricks of the trade, and he learned a lot of the tricks that he would utilize later on in Lord of the Rings, like especially with camera tricks, with dialogue, and whatnot. But I mean, also you go into Brain Dead. I mean, there's a lot of scenes in Brain Dead that look like some of the scenes that he filmed in Lord of the Rings, like especially in Fellowship of the Ring, with Gandalf in the Shire, and also with the Mines of Moria and everything. Mm-hmm. It's like, I mean, there's a lot in those movies that he would use later. And if you really want to see my argument for him being an auteur, you need to watch Heavenly Creatures. Heavenly Creatures, that has a young Kate Winslet in it, and it's based on a true story of these 2 young girls who murdered one of the girls' moms, because they were just really repressive and trying to stop them from having a relationship. I mean, it had some queer overtones to it, even back in the Victorian era when this case happened. But I mean, that is another incredibly beautiful movie that has just incredibly rich cinematic landscapes, and also an amazing use of practical effects that even kind of trump what he did with Brain Dead and with Meet the Feebles. And Meet the Feebles is really cool because like I said, that's an evil Muppet movie, and it's one of the craziest goddamn things you'll ever see. But it's also a very amazingly cinematic movie in its own right.
Hell yeah.
With once again utilizing a lot of the same tricks of the trade that he learned throughout making Brain Dead and Bad Taste and whatnot. And then before the Lord of the Rings movies, he made The Frighteners, which was basically kind of a horror comedy about this paranormal investigator who's played by Michael J. Fox. So yeah, it stars Michael J. Fox, and it's a really, really crazy little ghost story and everything, but it's also a comedy. And I mean, when you get into Lord of the Rings, it's like you see just everything that he learned just come together, and he finally had enough of a budget to kind of make his cinematic vision actually come forward and everything,
Yes.
And it's a cinematic vision that he would carry on to King Kong, which is also kind of considered one of his masterpieces. So no, I'm going to say straight up, no, he's an auteur all the way.
Fuck
like kind of in the same way that initially Michael Bay is an auteur.
Okay.
So
fair enough.
But even better than Michael Bay, because fuck Michael Bay.
Yeah, fuck Michael Bay. But I don't disagree. And I really need to check out more of his earlier works. But I remember watching Brain Dead, aka Dead Alive with You, and I mentioned in our episode that there were several shots of that looked like Peter Jackson to me, that I could definitely see his style and the cinematography and the direction that I was already so familiar with Lord of the Rings. And Peter Jackson had the unenviable task of taking this monumental franchise and taking these books. Now, I haven't read the books, so yeah, you'll have to forgive me on any inaccuracies as far as those go. I've done some research. I've definitely browsed wikis and seen a lot of discourse on, how close these movies are to the books and whatnot. But he had the unenviable task of not only adapting those books, but doing it in a way that would be palatable to an audience, so that he could get a 3-picture deal and also, have his own directorial style involved in it. And I feel like he accomplished all of those things. This is honestly just such a well-made movie, and I really don't think that we'll ever see anything like this in the world of cinema. Just the sheer scale of the project and the level of effort that all members of the crew went into filming these and released them back-to-back 3 years in a row. I really don't think that we'll ever see anything of this scale. I mean, the closest you get to that, again, kind of comes back to like Cameron with his Avatar movies, but those films don't hold a candle, because they've got the visual spectacle and pushing the technology forward like these films have done, but they have nowhere near the level of quality to their screenplays or the and just the subtleties of this film, because you could feel that, even though he definitely is going to make some deviations to make this more palatable for a movie audience, that he does have a lot of love and respect for the source material. And as far as I can tell, this faithfully recreates that. Obviously there's discourse online about how well it encapsulates all of the themes that Tolkien wanted to convey. And certainly there are things that would make him roll in his grave, I guess. But overall, I feel like the general consensus from the community is that these are fantastic adaptations in general, and even beyond that, they're just phenomenal films, fantasy adventure films. They really set the precedent for the genre, and that's impressive.
Well, to that point, what you have to remember about, like I said, that build up before these movies came out, a big consensus amongst most people online, and especially in the fantasy community and everything, as far as I was aware of it, was that these movies were pretty much unfilmable. Yeah. Because there's just so much that to put in to make them work. And yeah, you're absolutely correct in that. The way that Jackson actually and is I believe he had a writing team on this as well. They really found a way to adapt this into a screenplay that was engaging, that was still kind of palatable to a modern audience, because you have to remember, Tolkien's works came out at a time when the culture was very different. But now, nowadays the culture is at that point in the 2000s, the culture was getting a little more amenable to these types of big nerdy franchises. We were starting to have like the first rumblings of the superhero genre start to take effect and everything, and also some of the more and some of the big sci-fi movies of the time was kind of leaning that way. But this was really, really such a big win for that nerd culture to finally see something that they thought you couldn't really bring to the screen because of how much there is to adapt. And it actually ended up being the biggest strength of the story, is that because there's so much to adapt, Jackson was able to kind of make it malleable and form it into something that, actual mainstream audiences could accept and could get into.
Yes, definitely. And the thing that made the books so difficult to interpret, and, there were some attempts. There are the Benkin and Rass animated specials, as well as the other one that directly adapts these two films, the ones we're talking about today, or those two parts of the original novel. Because I think it's one novel split into 3 volumes, but what made that so difficult to adapt was its structure. It has a nonlinear structure with multiple character stories layered over each other, as well as just significant amount of information detailed in appendices. Just all of this lore and background information, as well as just pages dedicated to just explaining lore or even just describing the background. And so you've got the task of taking that and putting it on the big screen. And there are a couple instances, I think, where Peter Jackson takes things more literally than he probably needed to. But then again, in that cinematic context, you almost need to, because, not only does he want to make this a film that's so amenable to people that have read it, but also amenable to a more widespread audience. And so, of course, it's going to have a bigger action focus. But I feel even that he managed to pay respect to the large amount of information that was in Tolkien's novels, and managed to even take some of the appendices and interweave them into the main story. So you still get stories like Aragorn and Arwen's romance, kind of just interlaced into the main plot, or you've even gotten in the beginning of the Fellowship of the Ring, basically a lore dump of the history that doesn't feel out of place in a fantasy film, but it definitely feels like a lot of information that was probably revealed over appendices. And let's start the movie off with that. And honestly, it's such a fantastic way to start this trilogy. I guess we might as well start getting into this. For this Part 1 episode, we're going to be talking about Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers. And Part 2, we'll talk about Return of the King. But starting with that opening sequence in the Fellowship of the Ring, I mean, it just instantly sets the tone, right?
Absolutely. I would say that it's probably one of the better opening exposition dumps that I've actually seen in a movie, to be honest, because it's very succinct. I mean, it pretty much tells the basic gist of the story in a way that, still makes it seem grandiose and epic and everything, but it's kind of digestible in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And also having Galadriel be the one to actually give the narration. I mean, it actually kind of gives it a little bit of distance between the movie and the audience a little bit,
Yes.
because it's a character that has not been introduced just yet,
right? Yeah, we got Cate Blanchett narrating over this epic battle played out, so you also set the tone, and we get to see these battles that are going to happen. You're like, hey guys, we're going to have epic fights like this, trust me. I mean, it's going to take a while for us to build there before we get to that point, but it's coming. So I like that they throw that right at the beginning, so what we're in for. And I mean, you've even got this imposing figure of Sauron and his cool ass battle armor just wiping out hordes of men and elves and dwarves.
But what else is cool about that is how, when it comes to that origin story, we kind of it trails off near the end, where the ring is actually introduced. And then it's a little bit later on in the movie when they need to actually tell the story of how the ring ended up where it is, it actually reconnects with the background lore and everything. So, I mean, that was one way to kind of extend the exposition of the lore dump like a little further into the movie without, just overloading everything in the front end of the movie and whatnot.
Exactly. It even manages to incorporate basically the story of the Hobbit, or at least the important part, which is that Bilbo got the ring from Gollum, which is, notable since they had skipped the Hobbit at this point, and Peter Jackson would go to do that later. And I'll have more to say about the Hobbit film series, I think, in part 2. Maybe I'll touch on that. But they skipped over it here, and we jumped right into Lord of the Rings. And honestly, I think that was a good choice because it's a very tonally different story, and this kind of set the tone for this sort of mature storytelling in the genre. But yeah, I mean, it's done so well, and we get a lot of information, exposed to us, but it's succinct, like you said, and it's natural, and it works, and it kind of sets the tone as sort of a fantasy story. And then we get into the Shire, and we get these moments of respite because, shit's going to hit the fan later. So we get that calmness, we get some lighthearted moments, and Jackson spends quite a bit of time there before the action amps up. And that's nice. And one thing I do like about the extended edition, one thing I do think that the extended edition of this film does better is it does give us moments of character development early on here, where we get to see a little bit more about these characters that will pay off later. But even so, I think the theatrical cut does a good enough job. I mean, there are some cases where if you're looking back on this movie, and it's not obvious on first watch, but if you're looking back, some of the editing feels a little bit off, and then you watch the extended cut of the scene, and you're like, oh, okay, actually, that makes more sense.
Yeah, once again, it just goes back to how Peter Jackson really had to take all of this lore-heavy content and try to make it easy for mainstream audiences to get into. And part of that, was the way that it was edited. And because of that, it does lead to some wonkiness in the, at least in the theatrical cuts, and wonkiness in the pacing of the movie and whatnot, you know?
A little bit, yeah.
It's kind of like up and down. It has an ebb and a flow to it that doesn't really find a real rhythm to it, at least in the first half of the movie, like especially at the Shire though. I mean, there's just some edits there where it's just like, oof, it's like who's talking to whom and why. You know, it's like, but I mean, from what I understand, I didn't watch the extended version, but the extended version does kind of add up on that. And can I also say that I really love how Peter Jackson really knows how to take his set piece and just kind of make that into a character in its own right. That actually kind of adds a little more to the backdrop of each scene that they're in. Like the Shire is a perfect example of this. The Shire in its own right has its own character. You know,
it is
like this really nice and sunny, palatial, but really rustic and rural type of village. You know, I mean, nobody's really a peasant there, but I mean, everybody's just kind of, they get everything that they need within the community. You know, it's good old fashioned communism. You know,
hell yeah.
It's just straight up Hobbit communism.
Yeah, and what's awesome about that is I feel like that's why Peter Jackson did such a fantastic job adapting this, because I know the books will go on for pages just literally talking about the Hobbit lore and you know the culture of hobbits and what they do and things like that. And so you know in Tolkien's novel, the Shire is very much a character, or at least as far as my understanding goes. So it's very fitting that Jackson would find a way to do that cinematically. And he does make some changes here and there from the books, but I feel like they're good changes because they allow him to adhere to the show don't tell structure that a film needs.
Absolutely. And his penchant for making his set pieces into characters in and of themselves, I mean, that extends to other parts of Middle Earth here, like with Gondor, with Rivendell, with Isengard, even with Mordor itself. I mean, Mordor itself is just this evil, brooding place with hellfire and brimstone and lava, and orcs are being birthed out of the ground in these weird dirt flesh cocoons or something like that. I don't know. It's like it's really, really awesome how, you know, Middle Earth in and of itself just kind of comes up in its own right to tell the story in its own way. If you catch my drift.
Yes, definitely. It really does. And he does this so well with these shots, because, you know, you've got to take, you know, writing where Tolkien would have, you know, been trying to convey a certain emotion using his words. And so Jackson's got to try to interpret that and then translate that onto screen in just a few seconds with a landscape shot. But he does. And one of the biggest reasons behind that was his choice of using New Zealand, which, I mean, has just such a unique landscape. It's got a feeling that really just kind of sets this world apart from anything I've ever seen. It really has a unique feel to it. And I mean, yeah, they could have filmed in Europe or something, but I feel like New Zealand specifically was the perfect place because it gives it that mystical quality.
Absolutely. You know, I mean, at the end of the day, Peter Jackson knows his home country well, and so I mean, he knows how to actually film it properly, how to make it kind of pop and make it kind of come into its own. Yeah. So, I mean, it's actually a real masterclass in location scouting and whatnot. You know, because I mean, he found some like amazingly picturesque backdrops and landscapes that, I mean, once they went over with CGI and everything, just added, like I said, adds so much character to everything. So, I mean, yeah, I really, really enjoyed that part of this movie.
Yeah, and those landscape shots, you know, those backdrops may not seem so out of place now by today's standards, but back then, I mean, this was revolutionary. And I was watching these films in the theaters as they were coming out. I distinctly remember watching The Two Towers and Return of the King, and wow, I mean, everything looked like it was really there. I mean, and that's thanks in part to, you know, Peter Jackson's use of practical effects and real landscapes, but also even what CGI is used here to this day looks really good. So I feel like they did a really good job with that and selling the story. It's one of those films that's honestly hard for me to look at sometimes from a cinematic perspective because I'm so immersed in the story.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's very easy to kind of overlook some of the cinematic flourishes that Jackson actually added with all these backdrops and whatnot. You know, it's very easy to kind of miss all of that, like especially whenever you get into the action scenes. But the set pieces for the action scenes are actually very sumptuous and very characteristic in their own right, you know?
Definitely.
I mean, especially when you get into these big, huge medieval battles, you know, which I have to say is probably some of the best medieval battles that we've ever seen in any movie, fantasy, or based on real life otherwise. You know, I mean, probably not since Braveheart, I would say.
Yeah.
You know, it's like this is actually really brutal, up close. I mean, just balls to the wall, medieval sword and sorcery warfare.
Yeah, and some of it gets a little over the top and silly, but it's okay. It adheres to the rule of cool. And this film is a bit more mature than some of these other big budget films, and it does take itself seriously. But there are some moments that are like, okay, yeah, let's have Legolas shield surfing down a staircase, no scope sniping people. But you know what? Why the fuck not? That's cool as fuck. And
yeah, sounds like something that John Woo would have in one of his movies. I mean, come on now.
And I mean, there are some moments I think in Fellowship where I noticed that they did this weird, like slow, like low frame rate thing, and I feel like that was really kind of more of just a part of like early 2000s films, and I notably noticed less of that in the other two films, if at all. But it is a little odd watching it now.
Yeah, I will say that if there's anything that probably broke my immersion in this movie, it was that effect right there, because, I mean, it's glaring.
Yeah.
You know, and it's obviously a trend that you did, like you said, you did see it in a lot of 2000s movies, and not a lot of really good ones, you know? So it's kind of baffling that Peter Jackson actually added that effect here when, honestly, a good, just straight up slow-mo camera would probably have worked better and been more cinematically viable.
Yeah, but it's fine because, I mean, again, I mean, it really is just nitpicks that I can even kind of have at this movie, and that's only because I've seen these films dozens of times, and you know, every time it's a struggle to even look at this from an angle other than feeling like I'm a part of the story. But Fellowship of the Ring does a fantastic job setting up this world and this universe. It's a setup movie. A lot of the large scale big medieval battles aren't here yet, but that's okay because this is a setup movie, and that's what it's doing. Is it has the job to not only establish all the characters and make you give a shit about them, but also introduce you to this huge world. Just massive.
Not to mention, it's probably one of the more meme-worthy movies out of the three.
Yes,
arguably.
Yeah, one does not simply walk into Mordor.
Yeah, I mean, classics like that, or even just the. You know, when the Fellowship actually comes together at Rivendell.
Yeah.
You know, it's like there's some memes involving that and whatnot. It's like, no, this is incredibly memeable.
Yeah. Or I was there, Gandalf, 3,000 years ago. Or even the Mordor scene with Isildur and Elrond. No. This is such a memeable trilogy, and a lot of those come from Fellowship of the Ring. But yeah, I really feel like the movie kind of has me by the balls the whole time. It's very tight. It's a long movie. All of these are, but it flows so well, and it's so fast paced that it flies by. And, you know, all of a sudden you're on this journey with 4 hobbits, you know, from the Shire. They're on their way to Bree. They're coming across these scary ass ring wraiths, you know, and suddenly the film takes a darker tone than it had previously.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I mean, one of the things that made me a little apprehensive about revisiting these movies was the length of all of them, you know,
Yeah.
but then actually sitting down and watching them, I'm then reminded of the fact that these scripts were just written in a way that, I mean, it's just, it gets you immersed, and it keeps things moving in a way that even when it slows down a little bit, you still can't help but, you know, just want to see what's going to happen next in the story and everything. Even in the interpersonal conflicts, you know, between like Frodo and Samwise, or Merry and Pippin, or with Aragorn and the rest of the Fellowship. Mm-hmm. It really makes for compelling viewing all the way through. Even with some of the wonkiness that Fellowship of the Ring has early on in the movie, it still makes you want to really see how things actually work out in the end.
Yeah, and Jackson peppers these intimate character moments throughout, and that's important because it's what makes you give a shit about these characters, and even as soon as you get introduced to characters like Aragorn and Legolas and Gimli, once they get to Rivendell, which I think is when the film really finds its pace. I mean, everything from Rivendell to the rest of the film is just absolutely perfect. It's super tight, but as soon as you get to Rivendell, you're introduced to these characters, and suddenly you actually care about them. I mean, and the extended edition adds some nice things, like you get a little bit more on Boromir. Besides, he's kind of a dick at first, but even in the theatrical cut, I found myself surprised by how easily attached I was to these characters and getting to know them.
Yeah, and really that just comes down to the performances and also the casting. I mean, this is an amazing cast here. I mean, you've got Hugo Weaving, you've got Sean Astin, Sean Bean, Ian McKellen, Christopher fucking Heavy Metal Lee.
Fuck yeah.
Man, metal as fuck.
The man that took Peter Jackson to the side and said, no, that's not what it sounds like when a man gets stabbed in the back. This is what it sounds like when a man gets stabbed in the back.
And he fucking knew what that was because he went to war and he knows what that sounds like.
Yeah,
man.
What a fucking Chad.
That's metal as fuck.
And what's funny, he was a lifelong Lord of the Rings fan and a personal friend of Tolkien. And he actually had his dream was to play Gandalf. But Peter Jackson said, nope, you're more of a Saruman type. And I got to agree with Jackson on that. He is a compelling Saruman.
Yeah, he just has this aura about him where, I mean, you just immediately become intimidated by him, even before the turn is revealed where he's allied with Sauron.
Yeah.
But I mean, as a result, I mean, it even kind of turns Isengard into this really dark and foreboding presence in its own right outside of Mordor, especially when he starts amassing the orc army and everything. Yeah. And he's building all of his armaments and whatnot.
And I wouldn't be surprised if whenever he's speaking to that orc about the history of orcs as it's hatching and that wasn't itself like a lord up front, like straight copied from one of the appendices. That's exactly what it sounds like, but it's interwoven into the story so well. It's like, well, it makes sense for him to kind of exposition drop there. It works in this context.
Yeah, I mean, especially since the orc that he's birthing there is actually going to be one of his generals.
Yeah,
leading the Uruk-hai. Yeah, exactly. He's basically making his elite force there. So, I mean, yeah, it would make sense that he's pretty much just giving them like a crash course in, how their society works and everything, because, I mean, arguably, I guess you could say orcs don't really have like a childhood stage here. They're pretty much just kind of birthed from the womb that is the earth, just as they are, so
and again, probably even like all this information about how orcs are born and the details of it, would have been something you would have had to read some appendices to get. But here, let's we're just going to show you the process while
it's just going to show you just all the nitty gritty about how you make an orc, and it is not fucking pretty. It's like that's where a lot of Peter Jackson's previous experience in splatter horror really comes in. I mean, you see all kinds of flourishes of that throughout especially these first two movies.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, especially when we were talking about like the ring wraiths, I mean, those are fucking terrifying creatures.
They are. They really have a presence as soon as they show up, and Peter Jackson just does such a great job just conveying like everything that you're supposed to be feeling while you're watching all of this going on, and it's fantastic. But some of the other incredible performances that are just timeless. Aside from Christopher Lee, of course, Ian McKellen. I mean, I don't think anybody else could be Gandalf. He is literally like part of that character's identity at this point.
Absolutely. And no. I mean, when I think of Gandalf, that's the first person I think of. And honestly, it's because Ian McKellen was able to add a warmth to Gandalf that honestly I don't think Christopher Lee would have been able to give the character, to be honest. You know? I mean, there's something approachable about Ian McKellen as Gandalf, you know, where you can kind of come up to him and talk to him, even though he's this all-knowing, all-powerful wizard and whatnot. It eventually becomes a white wizard, even.
And actually, his personality changes. He's pretty much a different character when he becomes Gandalf the White. And Ian McKellen does that just as well and shows the difference in those characters really well. But I mean, even just getting this old homely, Gandalf the Grey character who comes in with his pointy hat and smokes weed and chills with hobbits. And, you get the sense that Saruman and the other wizards are just kind of like looking kind of down on him. I mean, we know that Radagast is kind of similar to Gandalf now, but yeah, I mean, just but here's this real down to earth guy that loves, he has all the power in the world and could influence all these things, and later, he has to get off his ass and do that. But up to that point, he's just homely and he's just spending his days just chilling. This, thousands-year-old dude who's I think essentially the equivalent of an angel in this lore.
Yeah, something like that. He kind of has that ascendancy to an angel-like status when he becomes Gandalf the White.
Yeah, I think the Istari. I think that's what they're called. They're like essentially angels, but they were born as wizards in the Third Age or something. I don't know. I haven't read the books. That's just some of the stuff I've read on the wiki and whatnot. But he does portray convincingly this centuries old, millennia old character who also just loves to chill with his buds and just chill, relax. But, when he has to become a presence, he's there. Of course, we have Elijah Wood as Frodo. For many people, this might be a weak point of the film. I know my dad, who loves these films, my parents both love these films to death, watch them at least once a year. And I have with them for many years. But my dad will always tell me, he's like, I hate Frodo. He's the worst main character ever. And I can see why people might get frustrated with him. He does do a lot of stumbling and looking cross-eyed and falling over, but I always still felt that he had a likable quality to him, despite the constant corruption of the ring. And we see what that does to other people, like Sean Bean.
Yeah, but I think that a big part of that is maybe to a degree, at least here in Fellowship, Frodo is kind of presented as a little bit of a blank slate of a character, somewhat, and maybe that was more or less to kind of make him a little more amenable to being the audience avatar, more or less, to make us kind of fall into the role of the main hero here, of the ring bearer and whatnot.
Yeah.
Arguably he really kind of gains more character, and Elijah Wood's performance actually improves after he actually gets the ring and starts going on his journey with Samwise. That's kind of what it feels like, at least to me. But I mean, up to a certain point in Fellowship, he's kind of a blank slate of a character. There's not a whole lot to him.
That's true.
Initially.
And I think that is intentional. I think, he becomes like a product of his experiences, and even his friends, I think, are much more colorful characters than he is. Sean Astin's Samwise Gamgee, the true hero of the story, and Dominic Monaghan's Pippin or Peregrine Took, and Billy Boyd's Mariotic, whatever the fuck his last name is, aka Mary.
And man, you just immediately see that distinction right away, especially when it turns out that Merry and Pippin were following Sam and Frodo the whole time, and they meet up in the cornfield and everything. It's like, they have this gregarious quality, but when you get into the two towers and they've actually seen some shit, it's like, no, that trauma grows on them and they start to grow as characters, and you start to realize, it's like it's time for them to get their big boy pants on and actually, or at least, relative to the age of hobbits. I don't know what their age is, but it's like, they're there's just that moment where the tone shifts and the hobbits are just like, oh shit. Yeah, this isn't like the Shire, you know?
Exactly. No, it's really cool to see these characters go on these journeys, and every character has a journey to take here, and it's fantastic. You know, that fool of a took, no more that. You know, like man, Gandalf fucking hates Pippin.
Oh, absolutely. Gandalf can't stand him.
No, but even he has a journey to go through it, and you know, you see, you know, I think he kind of has the most growth. But I mean, Sam was the OG from the beginning. He's the ride or die homie. I mean, I don't give a fuck what anybody says. Samwise Gamgee is the true hero of this story.
Yeah, there's that moment after Aragorn sends Frodo off with the ring where initially, you know, they're not supposed to know, but eventually Merry and Pippin figure it out. But when Sam figures it out, he doesn't let him go. He follows him, and he even risks drowning in a river in order to pretty much make Frodo, you know, take him. And he tells him, is like, I made a promise. It's like, don't let any harm come to Frodo, Samwise Gamgee.
Yeah.
It's like, man, that's strength of character right there, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, it takes a lot of strength to fucking have that kind of conviction. And I mean, honestly, Sam becomes one of the more respectable characters in this entire trilogy as a result.
Definitely, 100%. But, you know, yeah, you got these 4 hobbits on this journey. They come across the other true hero of the story, Strider, a.k.a. Aragorn, played by the amazing, incredible Viggo Mortensen, who just, oh my God, he makes the character. He is Aragorn, and he is such a badass. He definitely plays to the archetype of the cool badass, but at the same time, he has a very defined emotional core to him.
Can you believe that he wasn't the original choice to play Aragorn in this movie?
Dude, I can't imagine anybody else in the role.
I'm trying to remember who he was supposed to, who Jackson was supposed to have as Aragorn initially, but I guess I don't remember. But it didn't work out, and Viggo Mortensen was available, and man, we're all the better off for it. These movies are all the better off for it because I mean, he in a way kind of becomes one of the anchors of this trilogy. You know, I mean, even to the very end, I mean, his character becomes incredibly important later on.
Well, and he's more of the archetypal hero on a journey when you look at these kinds of epics.
Exactly.
That's what actually made Lord of the Rings stand apart, is that, well, the actual protagonist is Frodo, who's kind of an unexpected hero. And yet you have this other character who would ordinarily be the hero presented in this scenario. But he's got, you know, just as big of, just as important of a role to play. It's just like, we're just hearing the story. We just happen to be hearing the story from Frodo's perspective, but you know what I mean? Yeah. Aragorn is the hero of his own tale, starting from, you know, the unwilling would-be king, which I believe was actually an addition of Jackson's. I think in the book, Aragorn is kind of just waiting for the right time to reclaim his birthright,
his throne.
Yeah. But in the movie, they sort of give him a character arc, and I actually appreciate that because it gives you more to work with as the character in place of, you know, I'm assuming lots of info dumps that we wouldn't normally have, or we see him kind of have some sort of reluctance and you know, taking that on.
It certainly makes him way more dynamic a character than if they would have gone that other way. Far more dynamic.
Exactly.
And honestly, just the fact that the way that Mortensen plays him and like just instills this real humanity to him that you just can't help but connect with.
Especially at the end, whenever he's, you know, lying over the dying Boromir. Man, one of the most emotional moments in cinema. It's where men cried, Bo.
Bro, I have to say, why didn't Sean Bean get any fucking Oscar nods? I mean, I understand Ian McKellen got a Best Actor nod, but why didn't he get a Best Supporting Actor nomination? Because, god damn, he is probably the most human character in this entire movie.
He is,
to be honest.
And he's awesome because at first you're like, okay, yeah, he's kind of a dick, and when we see him succumb to the corruption of the ring, but then he ends out on a bang. But we also have human moments throughout the film of him. If you're paying attention, he's over there, training and even playing with Merry and Pippin and building a bond with them, which pays off when he gives his life to protect them. And it's at that moment you're like, my man.
Exactly. But I mean, even going back to when he initially tries to steal the ring, when Frodo puts the ring on and disappears, there's that moment where he knows he fucked up.
Yeah. And you can see it in his face.
He's just like, Frodo. It just comes on his face, and he's just like, oh shit, what the fuck did I just do?
Yeah.
I just killed this fellowship.
Yeah.
And he ends up redeeming himself in the end.
He does.
And he becomes the most honorable and most human character out of all of them.
And that story gets even deeper once we get to his brother Faramir and Denethor in the third film. But we'll get to that. Other characters, Liv Tyler's Arwen, of course. At least in the first film, it looks like, and this probably was a change made to make this more appealing to a movie audience, but she kind of does fit into this warrior princess archetype that apparently wasn't present in the books. The other films kind of dial back on this and relegate her back into a support role, but I actually always liked the scene of her coming in and rescuing Frodo. I think in the book, it was like Legolas or something, or at least in one of the adaptations, but they replaced it with Arwen here, and I don't know, I think it gives her a cool moment. Maybe the warrior princess archetype was a bit overplayed by that point, but I always look at that as just a fun scene. It's just really a spectacle, and it's one of the more memorable parts of the film.
It really is. And can I say that, both Cate Blanchett and Liv Tyler are probably the most elvish looking women, probably this side of Hunter Schafer to ever appear in a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, they look like real fucking elves. Like even Hugo Weaving and Orlando Bloom. I mean, they just look amazing in these movies, to be honest.
They do.
And that makes sense because elves are supposed to be these ethereal and beautiful beings that are like they're not human, but they're they kind of transcend time and everything. So yeah, I mean they really went out of their way to make these elvish characters look actually elvish.
Hugo Weaving's Elrond. Another iconic role of his. That's rivals that of what he did with The Matrix. You think of Hugo Weaving, it's either one of those two roles.
Absolutely. Yeah.
He's just awesome there. He's a very stoic character. He kind of seems conflict. He has to deal with the fact that his daughter, who, like him, is a half-elf, who can choose between the gift of mortality or immortality. And, seeing her fall in love with Aragorn and knowing that that's what her heart wants, but, wanting her to be immortal and live a peaceful life with him to the point that, as far as Fellowship goes, I mean, he's willing to convene the council. He's going to talk to Mithrandir and the other members, and he's going to kind of set a course. But after that, he's getting the fuck out, to the Undying Lands. He's like, you know what? Y'all deal with this yourselves. We're just going to live in peace. But the moment he changes his mind, of course, this doesn't come till much later, but the moment he changes his mind is when Arwen decides 100% that she's going to live as immortal. And, at that point, he's like, okay, well, I guess I need to save the world in order to save my daughter.
In order to ensure that when my daughter chooses mortality, she has a decent world to live in,
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that makes sense. And that makes him a far better father than he initially seems to be. I mean, he seems to be kind of cold to her a little bit, but in the end, you really see that he does just want the best for her and everything. So
yeah.
I mean, and that's why he's desperately trying to get her to go with him. I mean, he just wants the best for her.
Exactly.
But I mean, when she changes her mind, it's like he's just like, well, all right then. I she pretty much forces his hand.
Exactly. Yeah. So many characters that are just deep, complex. They all have their own journeys and character arcs to go through, and it all culminates in the finale. But as far as the rest of the first film goes, I mean, like I mentioned before, from Rivendell on, this is just a perfect film. It is just cinematically tight. We get a lot of those really cool shots, watching the Fellowship, superhero pose and walk through the mountains and shit. It's fucking dope. You've got just one of the very best film scores ever. I think Howard Shore deserves a seat at the table of best film composers for this film trilogy alone.
Absolutely.
I know he's worked with David Cronenberg some, but and done some other stuff. But what he's done with the Lord of the Rings film series and the Hobbit film series, wow. If nothing else, wow. Like, this soundtrack is just so good. Every single theme is iconic, from the main theme to the Fellowship theme, the Shire theme, the Rohan theme.
It's pretty much the example of a fantasy movie score. You know, it's the penultimate version of it, I should say.
Yeah.
One ring to rule them all. One ring to find them. One ring to bring them all. And in the darkness, bind them. Next Christmas, the most extraordinary tale ever told will come to life.
Even the smallest person can change the course of the future.
And so, and it's accompanied with these just beautiful, landscape shots and backdrops. You get some cool boss fights, like the giant squid thing and the cave troll in the Mines of Moria. The Watcher, I think that's what the squid thing is called.
And also the Balrog, of course.
And the Balrog, of course. Although you get to see more of that battle in the next one.
But it still gave us that iconic "You shall not pass" moment.
Shall not pass. Oh my God.
That's just iconic, man.
One of the most
iconic,
memorable moments in the entire trilogy. It's definitely inspired memes of its own. And it's so fucking cool. Ian McKellen delivers that so badass as this old man. And then, it's followed by by a heartbreaking scene. Every time I watch it, even though I know he's coming back, it's like just watching Frodo yell off after, Gandalf, no,
yeah,
fly, you fools, exactly, as he falls into the abyss. I mean, wow. And then the emotional moment with the music accompanied thereafter. The Fellowship has to kind of regroup after that, and every single one of them, has memories of Gandalf, and they've obviously been traveling with each other for quite a bit of time, in addition to personal history. So it's an impactful moment for everyone.
And I will say it was a scene that was so iconic that even Family Guy made fun of it, incidentally, with Herbert the Pervert, of all characters.
Oh my God, of course.
Yeah, no, it's pretty hilarious.
Fuck yeah. But yeah, so they get out of the Mines of Moria, the Bridge of Khazad-dûm, the Balrog. They hide up in the woods. The Fellowship of the Ring film ends, I think, a few pages later than the book does, and that I think the book ends with just Sam and Frodo going away. The bit with Boromir dying and the clash of the rest of the Fellowship with the Uruk-hai is how the second book starts. But I feel like it was a good decision placing it at the end of this one, because it is a very good emotional send-off for the end of the first part of the journey.
Exactly. It's a fitting way to kind of segue into the next movie, The Two Towers, which, I mean, oh my God, that's where this franchise just really, truly came together and became something special, right?
I agree. I actually do think that the Two Towers is where everything really ramps up, because Fellowship was kind of a setup film, and well, Two Towers is somewhat of a connective tissue film. It is also where the action amps up and we start getting really great moments. Apparently, large bits of it were actually put into Return of the King instead, and some parts of Two Towers are padded out. But I think it's actually done to the film's benefit. And I mean, the action's quite a bit more spaced out, but it makes just the ultimate culmination, what the film is building up towards, the centerpiece, Helm's Deep at the end, all the more impactful.
Plus, it actually truly establishes the different factions at play in Middle Earth to a greater degree. You know, I mean, you of course have the hobbits Frodo and Samwise, who then hook up with Gollum / Smeagol somewhere along the way.
Yeah,
you have Merrin and Pippin. It's like they end up with the Ents, and that leads to another important battle, and then you still have the Fellowship who's going after Merry and Pippin after Frodo and Samwise have gone off.
Yeah, the Golden Trio, the Three Musketeers, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. And I think their storyline is my favorite in this one, honestly.
Absolutely. They have like the best interactions out of all the movies in this particular movie, man.
Well,
like honestly.
Legolas and Gimli, for example, okay? Legolas and Gimli, have this sort of bromance that develops and blossoms throughout this film. And it really kind of picks up here in Two Towers. We get to see them kind of at odds because, one of them's an elf and one of them's a dwarf, and they obviously distrust each other. We all know that elves and dwarves hate each other. But we get to see them have a little bit of friendly rivalry here, and even some great character moments where, Éomer, played by Carl Urban, threatens Gimli, and Legolas just steps in and points an arrow at him. In a moment's notice, you would die before your sword fell. Like, that's a real bro moment right there.
It totally is, man. I mean, it really just undercuts how well these two characters eventually connect, and then they gain each other's respect. And at the end of the day, especially when you get into Return of the King, and they're total ride or die for each other.
The history will say they were roommates, but let me tell you one thing, okay? They lived, apparently, according to the lore, the rest of their lives unmarried and traveled to the Undying Lands together. Make of that what you will, regardless of what Tolkien intended.
Interesting. No way. That's good to know.
No, but seriously, man, this just a legendary cinematic bromance, and the chemistry between Orlando Bloom and John Rhys Davies pays off so well. I know we don't get as much of them as some of the other characters, and I know that John Rhys Davies is mostly played for comic relief, and I know some Tolkien purists are not going to be happy about dwarf tossing jokes, but you know what? I still laughed at these when I was a child, and I still laugh at them now.
Yeah, just a dumb, silly little joke. It's not really anything to really think about too much or get too deep into, I think. But Tolkien fans, I mean,
yeah. Don't tell the elf.
Exactly. which is weird that, I mean, you have that right in the middle of the Helm's Deep battle, which is this serious fucking siege that could mean the end of the people of Gondor and everything, but it's like,
yeah,
what the hell, It's like, why are we putting that right in the middle of this?
In retrospect, when you look at it, I can see why people might have an issue with it. But I think because that's such a tense moment, I mean, the film builds up to it, and that's certainly tense. And then you get to the fight, and they pretty much breach the wall right away. And so it's just constant tension. I mean, we see, children and elderly, gearing up before the battle. So, some people might feel that some of that is undercut by some of the silly moments like dwarf tossing or Legolas shield surfing down stairs, or but I still jive with it. I think that it kind of I don't know, it sort of helps with it. Maybe it doesn't, so the seriousness of it doesn't bring down the film too much. Having a little bit of those light moments. I mean, mileage will vary. Some people are not going to be a fan of it.
I'm kind of indifferent to it. I mean, it's just as well. I mean, a little bit of comic relief isn't going to hurt in this particular type of movie, but it's just a little incongruous to me.
But I think what does work is like having Legolas and Gimli have like kill counts, and they're trying to one up each other. That's cool, and that pays off, and we see more of that in Return of the King.
Yeah, that actually feels really in character with them, and in character with their rivalry and their growing friendship.
Exactly. And yeah, they're great. But like you mentioned, Bo, we have all these characters of the Fellowship now on different journeys. And I feel like that works to the story's benefit. It makes it more interesting. That's where really all these different things come into play, because we're able to explore different parts of Middle Earth and experience other new characters. And we have all of these things going on at the same time. And, some people might be put off when we're cutting to Treants in the middle of Helm's Deep, but I actually feel like it kind of paces the movie rather well.
It does, honestly. I mean, I never felt myself wanting to get to the next scene already with this movie.
Yeah.
It's like everything just really naturally flows into everything else in a way that makes sense. And a big part of that is because of, breaking off into different factions and, just having different moments where their stories are told at different parts of the movie. It actually works out rather well.
Yeah. Like, I mean, even when you're having these slow moments where you're having the Ents walk slow and talk slow, I still find myself vibing with it and liking it. And the extended cut actually doubles down on that. And there are more of those moments. So mileage might vary on what the extended edition brings with that one. I will say the extended edition does add one scene that I feel definitely helps with this movie and makes it better as far as Faramir's character goes. Because in this movie, he comes across Frodo and Sam, and he captures them. He takes them to Osgiliath. They make a throwaway line where they're like, he's like, by all rights, we're not even supposed to be here. And I think that's a meta joke because they weren't there in the book. But anyway, Faramir comes off as kind of a dick, kind of succumbs to some of the same, temptations that Boromir does, which was interesting with Boromir, but it's like, are we just rehashing that? And we get a moment where he's like, a chance for Faramir to show his quality. And you're like, okay, that's a cool line, but what's the context? Well, it's all in the extended edition. There's this huge flashback scene where we get to see his interactions with his father, Denethor, before we get to see him in Return of the King and Boromir, and get to see that relationship. And I think it actually pays off so much better because they use that line again, a chance for Faramir to show his quality. And it's repeated later in the film, and so it pays off better. So omitting that from the theatrical cut, I think, actually was a misstep. I feel like that scene showcasing Boromir's backstory, or Faramir's backstory, is actually really important. It also pays homage to Boromir and gives him a bit more of a presence in the film. The one saving grace is that even without that scene, You get to see Faramir, you get to see how he treats Frodo and Sam, and then later on you watch Return of the King, and it makes more sense in context. So at least, if you're watching strictly the theatrical versions, you do eventually get that payoff. But, as far as the way that it was told in this film, I do feel like leaving that scene out was a misstep.
I really do agree with that. I kind of wish that they would have found some way to edit that into the theatrical cut because, I mean, I feel like there was a little bit that was just left out with Faramir. And the extended edition apparently confirms that. So, I mean, that mystifies me that they would leave that on the cutting room floor and not have it in this movie. That's weird to me.
Yeah, it is a bit, especially because Jackson actually expands on other parts of the film. And it's weird because this film actually only adapts up to basically the end of Helm's Deep, which is, I think, like the midway point of the book, essentially. So, the whole bit up to Frodo, Sam finding Frodo after he got stung by the spider in Return of the King, that was actually at the end of The Two Towers. Jackson cuts that out and moves it to Return of the King. That's fine. And you can even see where he adds some original storylines to sort of pad out this film. Like you have the moment of Aragorn tumbling over the cliff. That's fine. It works okay. But if you're going to take away a character moment from Faramir for that, I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
But it's fine. I mean, it's a nitpick is essentially what I'm saying. I think that by the end of the experience, you still get to know these characters and what they're about. It's just, you may have to wait a little bit when you're watching the theatrical cut with Faramir. But there's also so much else that this movie does well as it introduces new characters. Of course, you have the standout Smeagol, played by Andy Serkis. This is where I was saying, Peter Jackson kind of was pushing the technology forward. I mean, this was one of the pioneering examples of motion capture, and God, it looks good for a movie that came out in 2002. It looks like he's really there.
I really have to say that this was one of the true technical feats of this movie, was what they did with Smeagol. Yeah. I mean, and what Andy Serkis did with them. I mean, all of those, facial features, all of those expressions, like everything, every movement that he made, that's 100% Andy Serkis. I mean, there's not much that was really scripted into his performance there. Like every little like every little mouth flap, every little like eye like eye expression and everything. I mean, that's all Andy Serkis. And apparently they were really at the Academy, they were really debating whether or not to give him an actual nomination, like, even though he's technically not actually in the movie, you know. But I mean, without this performance, you don't have mocap in a lot of things, like especially in gaming. I mean, gaming is where motion capture has really taken some real strides forward in technological advancement, But even then, this still looks way better than that, and that's amazing. Because there are moments where you're just like, no, Gollum is there. That is Smeagol. There is an actual being called Gollum on set right now. It's as close to practical effects that CGI has ever actually come to, probably this side of the first Jurassic Park movie. So yeah,
no kidding. And not only he's not. What you might expect out of a motion capture character like this is maybe somebody uses comic relief or, some sort of cute mascot type character. But no, he is, arguably the most compelling character in the film, in the trilogy. He's got a story that really works and shows the logical extreme of what the ring does to somebody after a few hundred years, and watching him at war with himself. And I know that there were some moments, I remember watching this in the theater, there were some moments that where his performance actually sparked laughter from the audience, but it's still like, when you're watching it, you're still like compelled by his, internal conflict.
Yeah, you come to realize that this is a broken individual who's just been completely completely run over by the power of the ring. I mean, he's waylaid by it. To the point where, you see Smeagol and then you see Gollum, that's basically his two personalities there. And you have that one moment in the movie where he's really having this argument with him, and it really feels like these are two distinctive individuals that are fighting with each other. Even though it's all in the same character. And once again, that's a testament to Andy Serkis's performance, even being able to convey that on set and then have it be conveyed through the actual CGI application of the Gollum character onto him, Well, once again, hell of a feat, and it still looks so amazing, and it feels so amazing, Yeah. I mean, you feel every moment where he's arguing with himself here. You feel Smeagol's meekness, and then you feel just the absolute malice that Gollum has. So
Gollum.
It really adds just an extra dimension to the faction that is Frodo and Gollum and Samwise.
Yeah, and honestly, it's kind of interesting because Frodo and Sam don't really have a whole lot to do in this part of the story. Most of what they do have to do comes from Smeagol and then their conflict with him as their guide. And in fact, like I mentioned, I think Jackson even kind of sort of padded out their journey a little bit to give them more to do at this part of the story, because really this film it really is more of Aragorn's story than anything.
Yeah, more or less. I agree.
This part of the story, or at least that faction of the Fellowship, it kind of feels like this has more part of their character journey. But yeah, Smeagol steals every scene that he's in. Andy Serkis's animated performance just brings that to life. But yeah, you've got new characters like I mentioned, Carl Urban's Éomer and Miranda Otto's Éowyn.
Yeah, Éowyn, man, is really interesting to me, mainly because, she becomes another love interest for Aragorn, for one. But two, it's like she's shown to have actual fighting capabilities, but she's still relegated to protecting the women and children in the keep and everything. And she straight up has a moment with her father where she's just like, "No, I want to go and fight," and he's just like, "No, you have a." It's like you need to be here to protect these people and everything. And there's a minor conflict there. But I actually think she's an interesting character, and she just adds a little extra to this movie, if you get what I mean.
A little heart to it, and also kind of a sort of a conflict for Aragorn, a sort of distraction away from his purpose and his goal. We know that his heart is Arwen's, but we do have a little bit of a conflict with that, and a little bit of indecision. And here's something else. But I even think that outside of her potential hypothetical romance with Aragorn, she's got so much more to offer this cast, and does more by the end of this trilogy for female heroes than the entirety of the MCU cast, whatever.
Yeah. She eventually has a little bit of a glow up in Return of the King, if I recall.
Yeah,
so,
we'll talk about that later. But she's got some great interactions with our Bernard Hill, who plays her uncle Theoden. He was cool, just seeing the transformation of him from that old man whose mind was poisoned by Saruman into the hero. It brings a tear to my eye when he takes the sword out of the sheath. He's like, perhaps you would feel right if holding you would feel strong holding your sword, or something to that effect.
Yeah, it was really cool how you just see the life just come right back into his face and everything. That was actually really amazing makeup effects there.
Yeah.
Can we also talk about Brad Dourif in this movie?
I was literally about to mention him. Brad Dourif.
Brad Dourif, man. It's like, hell yeah, playing, what's the character's name? Wormtongue?
Grima Wormtongue, yeah.
Yeah, geez, man. Like, he's exactly what I would expect Brad Dourif to play in this movie. Exactly what I would expect for him.
He really is, and he's such a slimy character. I love that moment when Gandalf gets in his face and he's like, "Keep your forked tongue behind your mouth." If I wanted to talk to a witless worm, I was like, "Oh my god, I love it." He's just like, he gets his comeuppance, and Aragorn actually spares his life. He convinces Theoden not to kill him, which honestly he should have, because all he ends up doing is coming back to his master and telling Homeboy where the people of Rohan are going to be camping up. So I'm not really sure what they accomplished with that, but that was Tolkien's message. It's in line with what Gandalf says, earlier in Fellowship about Gollum having a part to play, and he does.
Absolutely. But then we don't get that scene where he's with Saruman, and we get to see the how many Uruk-hai has actually been amassed at that point to take on Helm's Deep. And Wormtongue is even saying, like, Master, that would take tens of thousands of soldiers. It's like, there's no force like that in Middle Earth. And someone's like, "Oh, I already made one." And it's like, there they are. Yeah. Just the whole Uruk-hai just ready to go to war.
I know. Seeing like all of those bodies in one shot together is so impressive. It looks so good, and just like watching this action come out, and again, it ramps up the stakes, it amps up the tension. Setting up that Helm's Deep battle that is the centerpiece of the film. Can you believe that? Tolkien had some notes on if they were to ever do a film adaptation within his lifetime. He had some notes on what he thought would work. And he even admitted that he knew that parts of it would need to be omitted from the story. And Tolkien himself apparently had suggested that Helm's Deep be removed. And I'm so glad Peter Jackson did not do that, because...
No, honestly, a good siege battle is something that you would expect in a fantasy medieval setting, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, and this is one of the better sieges that we see in these types of movies.
Yeah, and it just comes really to a head, by the time you get to that iconic sequence where we have, Gandalf and the army behind him with the light enveloping them, clashing into the army, like, oh my God.
Epic, man. Fucking epic. I love that moment, It's when the tide of the battle completely shifts,
Yeah.
But then you also have what happens with Merry and Pippin and the Ents, You have that moment where, the Ents eventually recognize that they might have to do something about Saruman.
Yeah, that last march of the Ents, oh my God, that moment is so badass that whatever you thought of all the Ent moments before that, it all pays off for that.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, and I like to think that, the whole thing with them actually having to congregate and talk about it, it's meant to add some frustration to the story a little bit because, I mean, at the end of the day, there's practically a massacre happening just not too far from there. And there's a massive military buildup on their borders and, they have to do something about it, but they typically don't like to fight, So, I mean, Treebeard, he has to pretty much, in the Ent language, which apparently takes quite a while to speak, actually encourage the other Ents to arm up and go to battle. And but when they actually do go to battle, god damn, that is one of the coolest moments ever. Like Isengard just kind of gets waylaid. Absolutely fucking waylaid.
Oh, I know. Just watching that like industrial hell just get just flooded by the dam, and it would apparently return to its former beauty after this event. But yeah, if you didn't walk up to Isengard knowing that Saruman was a bad guy, just looking at the state of things, I don't know what to fucking tell you, man.
Yeah, right. It's like, no, obviously something's been fouled up here. It's not looking too good around here.
But
so,
the trees,
yeah,
the talking trees break the dam, flooding the industrial fortress. I mean, it's such a powerful message.
It really is. It's like a little bit of a anti-industrial uprising. It's like fucking A.
Yeah, no kidding. We also mentioned earlier that Gandalf goes through quite a bit of a transformation as Gandalf the White. And I wanted to touch on that a bit more because I do feel like his performance changes considerably to fit the tone of the character here, where, he's less of the warm, folksy old man chilling and smoking weed and more of Gandalf the warrior here. And even that scene where we're introduced to him in Fangorn Forest, I think is so cool because we don't see whether it's Gandalf or Saruman. His face is obscured and even his voice is obscured in a way where it sounds like it could be Christopher Lee. It just sucks that moment was ruined by the fact that Gandalf was featured on all the promotional material for this film.
I know that was a little bit of a misstep right there because that's a pretty important reveal. So yeah, it's like, but movie posters kind of do that. It's that and trailers, it's practically a tradition in Hollywood. So
I'll tell you what though, I remember my mom and I going to the movies and seeing the film poster for The Two Towers and being excited because we saw that Gandalf was back and that he didn't actually die in Fellowship of the Ring.
Nice.
And this film opens up with that, by the way, where the last film opened up with a monologue about the history of Middle Earth. This one gets right in the action and flashes back to exactly what happens to Gandalf after he falls into the pit with the Balrog. And man, what an awesome opening sequence. It like that shot of the Balrog falling in the darkness from far away is so cool.
Yeah, just into that huge cavern and Gandalf is still fighting with him, like even all the way to when they hit the bottom. It's like so fucking epic, man. Yeah. I mean, it once again, iconic as all hell.
Yeah, this film is full of cool moments. I mean, right down to Aragorn pushing the doors of into the hall. My brother and I used to do that all the time. We'd push doors open like Aragorn does in Lord of the Rings. and I gotta tell you, I mean, if you're even a little bit queer, you were questioning your sexuality when you watched him do that.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely.
That was probably
sure-
a
I'm sure.
bisexual awakening for a lot of people. God, he looks so fucking cool doing that though.
He does. I'm not gonna lie.
But I mean, even Gandalf has cool as fuck moments like that, like when he busts into Rohan, and just it just gets in with his staff and puts Grima Wormtongue in his place and takes Saruman out of Theoden. Man,
Yeah, he pretty much just takes charge right in that moment. He's just like, nah, Saruman, you're not gonna win here. You're not gonna possess him.
Yeah.
He's like, get out of here.
Meanwhile, John Rhys Davies is falling off horses and getting tossed, but oh well.
God damn it. It's like, yeah, no, more justice for Gimli, damn it.
And Legolas is literally there just to look cool in like 90% of the scenes he's in.
Absolutely, yeah, he's there to look cool and purty.
Legolas, what do your elf eyes see? They're taking the hobbits to Isengard. Dude,
Right.
the memes that came from this movie too, right? They're taking the hobbits to Isengard, as well as, what's taters, precious? What's taters? Potatoes. Boil them, mash them, stick them in a stew.
Classic. Fucking classic, man. So it sounds like in the first movie when they're at the pub, is like Marin is just like, they come in pints,
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. It's just so many meme moments from these two films, and even more to come in Return of the King.
Yeah.
But let's see what else here.
I mean, wasn't there like a major character that was taken out of the Two Towers, like Tom Bombadil
Tom
or something
Bombadil.
like that?
Yeah. Tom Bombadil was a character from the books. I don't know which book he appears in, but he was a character that was omitted from this film. And from what I've heard about him, I feel like it's probably better off omitting him. But I'd love to see him show up in some sort of, Lord of the Rings show. I don't think he's shown up in like Rings of Power or anything. I don't know. I haven't watched that, so.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. I mean, he's actually a very memorable character from what I understand in the original novels. So, I mean, it's just another one of those things that they had to take out in order to make this a much more palatable storyline. Otherwise, you're going to get like 4 or 5 hour long movies along the way. But
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, you've already got so much going on that you really don't need more. And I feel like it does take away from some of the focus of the story. I there are definitely scenes that I definitely, in books like these would feel or make sense to take out. Like, I know that there's some like early detours with the hobbits on the way to Bree from Fellowship. That's like, okay, we don't need to watch them getting swords in this town. It's okay if Aragorn just conveniently has 4 hobbit-sized swords with him. You know what? I'm okay with that because it could have happened off screen. I'm not going to question it. We'll need to spend time on that in the movie.
absolutely. I mean, once again, something as lore intensive as this, I mean, you're just not going to get everything. But I mean, if you know what you're doing, what you get from it can actually tell a decent story. So, I mean, and that's more or less what Jackson achieved here.
Yeah, definitely.
The power of the enemy is growing. War on this country will come swiftly. For Sauron will have dominion over all life on this earth.
Who now has the strength to stand against Isengard and Mordor and the union of the Two Towers?
The strength of the Ring-Bearer is failing, and the creature Gollum senses the ring is close.
The thieves stolen my precious, and we want it.
to you now, at the turn of the tide.
Yeah, I guess with that, we can go ahead and get into our final thoughts on both Fellowship of the Ring and The Two Towers. So what about you, Bo?
Honestly, this is some primo 2000s nostalgia for me because, yeah, I saw these movies in the theaters as well and everything. So, I mean, yeah, it was like like along with this and back then the Star Wars prequel movies, which kind of sort of came out around the same time, more or less. I mean, I would say I prefer these and have a better memory of these movies, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the cast is just really stacked with amazing powerhouse performances and whatnot. I mean, the cinematography is stunning. The locations and backdrops are gorgeous. The score is pretty much set the standard for fantasy movies like there on out and everything. I mean, you could argue that we wouldn't have gotten what we saw in something like Game of Thrones without the Lord of the Rings kind of taking that mantle early on in the 2000s and whatnot, you know? Like, it pretty much made for a run on taking these types of stories and making them into movies and everything. So I mean, it's an amazing achievement, and I honestly believe that only Peter Jackson was the one who could really bring this to fruition. You know, I mean, he's just as much of an auteur, but also there's a silliness to his directorial style that I think kind of lends itself well here. You know, like a good example is that in Fellowship of the Ring, that wizard battle between Saruman and Gandalf.
Yeah.
You know, there's a little bit of a silliness to it, but it's also very imposing and exactly what you would think a wizard fight would actually kind of look like between two old, like centuries old wizards and everything. So now, I mean, Peter Jackson was exactly the person to bring this to fruition. I'm glad that Miramax sold it because, you know, we don't want Harvey Weinstein's ugly, nasty bits all over it.
Yeah, no kidding.
Apparently, there's even in Return of the King an orc that was specifically made to look like him. So there's that, which is amazing.
Yes, the Weinstein orc.
But yeah, I will say that Fellowship of the Ring works as a good little setup for the rest of the trilogy, and The Two Towers, it does an excellent job of really getting the story moving and getting everything in place for what we see in Return of the King. So, I mean, I think that these are incredibly watchable movies that definitely have an auteur level of directing to them. It's like, I mean, what can I say? It's like you have to experience these movies if you're into cinema in any meaningful way. And these first two movies are just really flow well together. Yeah, there's some wonkiness in the editing and pacing in the first movie, but that's pretty much fixed by the time we get to the end of Fellowship and the beginning of, and we get into Two Towers. So, yeah, I recommend every cinemaphile to really get into these movies. It's like, I mean, even the theatrical cut, I mean, it still works, you know? So, hell yeah. I'm glad that we're doing these movies. I can't wait to talk about Return of the King with Jim from Film Rage coming up here very soon. It's going to be interesting to conclude this trilogy.
Yes, definitely. And I'm really excited for it because Return of the King is my favorite. And that's why it's getting its whole episode. But we'll touch on some other stuff like the Hobbit film trilogy and other things. You know, just to kind of put our all of our thoughts on the franchise as a whole. But yeah, as for my thoughts on these films, I mean, if I haven't made it clear enough, these movies are very close to my heart. I watched them a lot growing up. They're very much millennial movies. This is stuff I grew up with. I watched these in the theaters, even from an early age, and they've imprinted on me, and they've kind of influenced the way that I look at adventure movies or really cinema in general, epic cinema for sure. And this it's fitting because The Lord of the Rings is a franchise that cannot be understated its influence on medieval fantasy. I mean, literally everything post Lord of the Rings, everything post Tolkien is derivative of him, whether intentional or not, whether direct or indirect. Everything is influenced. Any modern fantasy story is borrowing something from Lord of the Rings. That's what's insane about it. And for Peter Jackson to take that and to elevate it, and I really think he did, to take that story and elevate it and present it to this modern audience. That, I think at the end of the day, no matter what his thoughts were on all the changes and whatnot, I think Tolkien would have been pleased with the influence that these films have had and their understanding, and the more people that have been brought to reading the books as a result of it. I mean, you can tell the love that was poured into these and the detail and just how much of a cinematic achievement it was. This was a really, really ambitious thing to do, to film 3 films like this back to back, and with the scope that they did, with all the people involved that they did. And I don't think that we'll ever see that kind of dedication out of the industry, to be completely honest with you. But these first 2 films do such a good job of setting you up for that climax. Like I mentioned, Fellowship of the Ring is really good at establishing the stories. It's honestly, out of all of them, kind of the most of a comfort movie for me. These are all comfort movies for me, but Fellowship especially, because it has kind of that warm quality and that world building quality that I really like. But then Two Towers just picks up immediately from that and does not let off with the pace and continues to deliver, not only epic, grandiose, action set pieces, but intimate character moments. And honestly, yeah, I'm really excited to conclude this trilogy here.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next episode. It's going to be a good one.
Hell yeah. But all right, if you enjoyed that, let us know. You can give us feedback on your platform of choice, 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, or help us rise up the ranks on Good Pods. We do have a sister podcast called Collateral Gaming, and by now we should have out our year in review episode. For the month of February, we are supposed to be doing Night Trap and Vandal Hearts. So hopefully by now we'll have one of those episodes out or here very soon. But yeah, maybe you and I should get together and talk about doing Night Trap soon.
Yeah, we should definitely. I was just thinking about that earlier today, honestly.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll get that recorded quickly so we can get that out to you. I do want to do a bonus round covering the 100-line Last Defense Academy, because I've been putting so many hours into that game, and I did half of a game lunch review on it. So, and I know that we're going to be kind of reduxing Expedition 33, which was the other half of that review. So I was like, fuck it. I've been pouring so many hours and I have so many thoughts on this game after getting at least, 70 something of the 100 routes now, or endings. So I have a lot to say. So I'll record an episode on that. And I'd love to do a bonus round episode with, and I'd love for you to join, Bo, where we review the games available on the Virtual Boy Nintendo Classic service, because guess what I got in the mail today?
You got the Virtual Boy headset, right?
No, D's nuts.
Oh,
no, I'm kidding.
God damn it.
No, it was the Virtual Boy. I got the Virtual Boy accessory for Switch and Switch 2. It's really cool. It's basically just the headset, like a plastic accessory peripheral, but you place the Switch or Switch 2 in it, and it goes into VR mode, and it works. It's every bit of eye aching as the original was. And it's basically the same technology. They have a cardboard version too for like $25, but this one was $100, and it's cool. So I want to do an episode covering all the games that are currently available in the Virtual Boy service. So next time I come down, I'll play those with you, Bo. Also this month, Resident Evil Requiem is coming out, and I want to do a game lunch review on that. It's coming out the same day as Scream 7, and I know we should definitely do an At the Movies review on that.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Let's do an At the Movie episode on Screen 7 and a game launch review on Requiem, man. I mean, I've seen some of the gameplay trailers of Requiem, and that looks really interesting, man. I mean, especially we're getting Leon back, so
Leon.
Yeah,
dude, I'm so stoked for both of those. They both come out the same day, and I'm ready.
Awesome.
So yeah, stay tuned for all of that coming from Collateral Gaming soon. Our next episode on Collateral Collateral Cinema will be Lord of the Rings Part 2. And I believe by now or soon we should have out our episode on Return to Silent Hill. That's already been recorded. So I believe we'll have that out already, so you can go listen to that. But I'd also like to do an At the Movies review on Send Help.
That would be interesting. Yeah, the new Sam Raimi movie. I've heard a lot of really interesting things about it.
It's
good.
And it's so good.
It's his. It's also his best rated movie in years so far. So it's like,
Sam Raimi's coming back to do horror, and we got to cover it. And it's honestly, it's really good. It was a film that I was really thankful to be in a movie audience with. I was also really thankful to watch Lord of the Rings in the movies again. That's an experience I haven't had in 20 years. So
awesome. Hell yeah.
Yeah. But what else is coming up from Collateral Cinema?
Well, like you said, the Lord of the Rings Part 2 episode is coming up, but our last 2 episodes of the season are going to be Rocky 4. I believe we're going to have the podcast That Wouldn't Die and also Derek from Hindsight Movie Reviews on that for a little. So yeah, we're getting a little double guest host there and everything.
Yeah.
And we will be joined by Kaylee from Once Over with Kaylee to talk about Salo, or the 120 Days of Sodom, or basically real life now, apparently. On the season finale. Yeah, so yeah, we're going to talk about Salo. Yeah, that's going to be fun.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So yeah, look for that coming very soon. And then we will also have our 420 episode in April. That's going to be Mystery Science Theater 3000, the movie. We should have Cat Bus Russ from 90 for Chill on that one. And then we're going to get into our postseason. We have our Meek-versary episode that's going to be Dead or Alive. I believe Russ is going to join us for that as well. So yeah, I mean, we're going to have those out. Plus, we will have our post-season content figured out here very soon. So look for all of that coming soon. And also, we just recently partnered with Dubby Energy. So we're going to put our link in the show notes and use the coupon code CCinemaPodcast to get 10% off of your first order from Dubby Energy. It's really good stuff. I drank some right before we started the podcast, and it's kept me nice and alert and functional for the most part. So check that out. And like I said, Cinema Podcast, it'll save you 10% on your first order from W Energy.
Hell yeah. And if you want to support the show, we do have other ways too. We do have a merch store on Dashery. We do have a Buy Me a Coffee, and we do have a Patreon where you can get exclusive film commentaries. And we do have a new commentary on Fateful Findings recorded. So stay tuned for that very soon.
Yeah, and then the next one will be The Disaster Artist, which we will do next time Ash comes into town, whenever that is. So it's like, yeah, look for that coming very soon. We're definitely going to start releasing at least one commentary a month from now on. So yeah, look for that, and do support us there. I believe we have $1 and $5 tiers.
Hell yeah. Yeah, and also check out Collateral Let's Play on YouTube. We are doing Phoenix Wright Wednesday as we work our way through Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney. Right now we're going through Turnabout Samurai, and I believe our next episode will be the final day trial. So stay tuned for that to see the resolution of that case. We are doing Metroid Zero Mission on Metroid Monday, and I should be completing that within a couple more playthroughs. And also Shooter Saturday. I'm going to jump back to modern gaming shooters because we've done a little bit of retro shooter content, boomer shooter stuff. So I'm going to jump back into Battlefield 6 and play a little bit more of that. And we'll do some more Black Ops 7, and I'd like to try out something like Arc Raiders as well. That's something a little bit different as an extraction shooter. So yeah, stay tuned for more Let's Play content on either of our YouTube channels, and you can find us on social media or wherever you get your podcasts. We have links in the show notes. And anything else to add, Bo?
No, I guess not. I was trying to think of a good Lord of the Rings quote to say, but I guess not.
That's okay. I got you. Well, with all that being said, I've been Ashley, son of Robert, and you have my sword.
And I have been Boromir, king of Collateral Cinema, or something. I don't know.
And you have his bow or something.
No, yeah, you have my bow. I am Boromir, and you have my bow.
And my axe. Boromir doesn't even have a bow. Whatever.
What are we doing? I don't know. All right, laters, I guess.
Collateral Cinema is a Collateral Media podcast. All music and movie clips are owned by the respective creators and are used for educational purposes only. Please don't sue us. We're poor.